All right.
Hi, Paul Sackett, Good News Planet. I'm speaking to Russell Heath. Hi, how are you?
I am quite well, Paul. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, well, we met over a book that you had created, and we've carried on, let's say.
Yes, more to talk about.
There you go. And you have you help others, and in one way you help others learn more maybe about themselves by creating inner peace within themselves. And I thought that's pretty cool. And especially since we're so peace-minded, imagine peace. And so tell us a little bit about your background and how you might help somebody maybe make some tweaks or look inner, or where do they go?
No, right. So I'm a life coach, a life and leadership coach, and I have been for about 8 years now professionally. And I got into the job because I was running an activist organization in Alaska. And I realized that I could only take that organization as far as I was personally developed, right? That when we got stopped, it was because I was stopped as a leader. And a lot of the leadership training is about skills. And I saw that it was really about inner development. And so I left Alaska to go to New York City to dig into leadership coaching as a coachee, not as a coach. And I spent 4 years doing that. It was really quite revelatory for me. And at the end of it, I decided I could make a bigger difference by becoming a leadership coach myself, as opposed to going back into the trenches and as an activist.
So we're going to put up something that you created, a document.
Okay.
With your permission, where you have, you kind of really broken this down. This could be a book up into itself, or a handbook, I suggest. Structures that encourage peace, life coach, story, hijacked by some pricing for help, and then some questions to ask yourself, and so on. So where do we go? So what's step one?
Okay, so step one, great. So I'd like to tell a little story, and let me give a little background to the story. So one of the things that I'm honored and privileged to be is as a life coach, people share their inner lives to me. And though they may come for leadership training, what I discover very quickly is that most of us create a lot of internal suffering, that the way our minds work or the way we work with our minds causes a lot of pain and suffering. And if that suffering is internal, then of course it's projected externally. And that's where we have threats to peace, where people get into arguments and into fights. So a lot of my work is trying to bring inner peace to people with the hope or expectation that as they develop inner peace, then when they're interacting with other people, they do so from a point of love and connection, as opposed to putting up your fists. So I'd like to start with a story. This is a story that really was shocking to me when I figured out what was going on. And I just like to use it because it's a good example of how we can default into, I don't want to say violence, but into hurting other people and hurting ourselves. So I had a girlfriend once who was very wealthy, and she had this extraordinary refrigerator. It was a big high-end refrigerator. It was made of wood, so no refrigerator magnets would stick to it. And if you opened it up, looked inside, it was just packed. It was jam-packed. You couldn't put anything else in there. And if you looked really carefully, you notice that she would have like 7 Kraft French dressings and 6 jars of pickles all opened, and 5 different packages of cheddar cheese all opened, and some of them getting moldy. So she had lots of the same stuff, 8 containers of mustard and 5 of ketchup. And the thing is about this woman, and she was an extraordinarily warm and generous woman, is that she had 2 teenage boys. And between them, they went through a gallon of milk a day. But you couldn't put a gallon of milk in that refrigerator. So every day she'd run out to the corner store, to the gas station convenience store, and pick up a half a gallon or a quart, depending on the refrigerator. She'd get a half gallon into that refrigerator. but she lived in a mansion on a mountaintop, and that was a 45-minute round trip. And she did it every day to pick up a half-gallon of milk to keep her boys lubricated, right? And I thought this was crazy. And did you think I kept quiet about it? No, I told her, I said, this is crazy. Quit buying French salad dressings, quit buying cheddar cheese, quit buying pickles, quit buying all this stuff. And then you'd have plenty of room to put a gallon of milk in. And she'd get all pissed at me for criticizing her. And she'd say, leave it alone. It's my refrigerator. I'll live my life, whatever. But you could see we got into fights. And I fully believed at that point in my life that I was a superior refrigerator manager to her. And I just let her know. But here's the question, why would I care? Why is this important? What am I getting out of it? And what's the cost to me? And what I saw is what I was getting out of that, having that argument of making her wrong, of criticizing her for the way she managed her refrigerator, was that I got to make myself right and make her wrong. I got to dominate her, and I got to be better than her. I got to, I'm better, you're worse than, it was my arrogance there. And that's really why that's why I was criticizing her. It wasn't the refrigerator itself. That was just an excuse for me to exercise my righteousness, my dominance, and my arrogance. Well, there's a cost to us when we do this. There's a tremendous cost, and the cost is obvious. The cost is in connection, intimacy, love, sex. I mean, it wasn't fun in bed that night, after I bragged on her about the refrigerator. So I call this dynamic the hijack. So we let righteousness, domination, wanting to win, wanting to be right, wanting to be better than, we let that hijack us from really the more important things, which is, connection and intimacy and love and just having fun.
Can I stop you for 1 second here?
You certainly can, yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because I feel it's, what I want to ask you is, I know it's pertinent to me, and I believe it's pertinent to a lot of people that I put in the category of people that are helpful, caring, loving, kind people.
Uh-huh.
I would be possibly suggesting a similar comment, in a kind, loving, caring, non-dominant, no macho man, no I am better than scenario. So how do we, it is a fine point. You got to know your customer too. You have to know who you're dealing with, whether they can accept you for the way you're doing it. Some people are very good at I have a daughter, she's very good, she knows how to say it in a different way or how to do it. But it seems to me especially with relationships, if you don't mind me us taking a second, with divorcing and not having having arguments and stuff. How do you know you're not a macho guy? You're not doing it for a macho. From my little observation of you, you're a good guy wanting to help her, not have to schlep 45 minutes. So to get a gallon of milk. So what do? You stand back, or how do you deal with it?
That's a great question. But what I wanted to suggest is the first thing that you need to do if you want to offer help to someone else is you've got to be clear of what's going on inside you. Because if you are coming from righteousness, no matter how you do it, that other person's going to pick up on it and get defensive or get pissed off. So this is a choice that we have, is how do we engage other people? Every time you criticize somebody, you're saying, I'm better than you. I'm right, and you're wrong. And we criticize people all the time. Certainly a lot of people, you can just see it in this last, on the people on the left, the people that tend to be for peace are tremendously critical of, say, Trump supporters. And if they're doing it from righteousness and better than and arrogance, they're not bringing people together. They're not creating external peace.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. I mean, I always put the word constructive. I even don't like this word constructive criticism.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it from love, from earth, you know, simple baby love that I'm trying to help this person. And what I think, yes, is so, is helpful. But I have gone down a lot of times in this process. I've been appreciated a lot of times too. I'd say was appreciated more, but that I always find is, I'm not trying to make this about me here, but I they have to also be thankful for you. You know, I appreciate you doing it, but I'd rather, this is my way, or whatever. I don't know. I keep going because you have a lot to share with people here. I'm sorry, but it's for me a confusing, and it's an important one too.
So yeah, it's an important point, and you're making a good point, Paul. The two things is you've got to be really careful where you're coming from, right? That's my point. And what I'm saying is create what our real point here is inner peace. If we can be very critical of somebody else and not tell them, right? If we're doing that, if we've got if we're building a court case against them of everything they're doing wrong in our head, we're not creating inner peace. So the question, there are two questions here. It's one, how do we create inner peace? And then how do we engage other people? And you're asking the question of how we engage other people. And I would say the first place you have to go is you've got to have inner peace inside you, and then you can engage other people. And just to answer your question specifically, you ask permission. You say, hey, I might have a better way here. Are you interested in working with me to figure out a better way? And they say, no, I want to do it my way. And that's fine. You move on, right? So if you're going to give advice, you always ask permission first.
That's a good, I know people that do that. Can I ask you a question?
You may.
Thank you. Okay. Proceed, Professor.
Yes. So.
And you're very good at this job. You did pick the right side of it. Forward motion.
Alrighty, thank you. So this is the deal in a hijack. Anytime you are making a judgment of another person, anytime you're criticizing another person, anytime you have in your head, hey, I'm better than the other person, you are diminishing your internal peace and increasing your internal strife. And of course, that'll get reflected outside, just like it was with my criticism of my girlfriend about how she managed a refrigerator. So the question, you've got a choice now. So if you start noticing when you're hijacking, when you're doing something out of righteousness or dominance or wanting to win, you can stop and say, all right, I have a choice. Am I going to engage this person from righteousness, or am I going to engage this person from love and connection? And if you say, I want to do it from love and connection, you got to sit back and figure out how to do that from that point of view and not from righteousness. And if I could just back up and give a little theory here, we have two centers of motivation in us. On the one hand, we have what in coaching we call the survival mechanism, but most people would consider it your ego. And your ego is a way of protecting yourself. Your survival mechanism protects yourself mostly from physical harm, but also emotional harm. And the way it does that is through being right, looking for being liked or high status, and collecting material goods. So these three things: winning, righteousness, being right, status or being better than other people, or buying and having a lot of material goods, are ways that your survival mechanism uses to protect you. All right. And that may be a valid reason sometimes. So those may be valid reasons. There's nothing wrong with protection. But the other motivation that we have in us that is often squashed because it's scary is what in coaching we call our essence. And our essence is about love and connection. And to let love and connection out, you have to be vulnerable. You have to take emotional risks. You have to risk being rejected. You have to risk failing. You have to risk, right? Looking like a fool sometimes. When you pick up the phone and call somebody out and ask her for a date, that's a risk there. And it's that risk that the survival mechanism is trying to mitigate or to reduce. But if you want to bring inner peace, you've got to be open to taking those risks. You have to lead with your heart and not with your fists, not with your righteousness.
With
So,
you.
go ahead.
No, I'm with you. I'm listening. This is making sense.
So this is our pathway as human beings into development, is to be able to start distinguishing our survival mechanism, distinguishing when we need to be right or when we need to dominate or whatever. And we do it in all kinds of ways. Sometimes it's outwardly aggressive, and sometimes it's passively aggressive. And you can be very aggressive coming from victim. I'm a victim, therefore I get to treat you like this, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can bring strife into the world and then rationalize it to ourselves that we're really doing something good. But
So
this is
I will
go
ask
ahead.
you a question here. So doesn't sound like probably a naive question, but it's good to take a moment to, I remember in graduate school, to take a moment to look at your stance, or as Michael Jackson would say, look in the mirror and see who, spend a moment or two. I don't know how much time I spend with me in thinking about me and my ways. I wonder, I think I just kind of, I think I have a good soul, and I'm just, every action I'm working on is kind of good soulish, I hope. And, I know you and I talked, and I'm at a stage in my life that I'm now thinking about all aspects of myself. I decided to I'm going to slow down, take a moment to contemplate my navel, maybe some people say. It's a good thing to do. When do you do that? When do you know that you need to be? Is it after a breakup, or is it after a terrible business scenario, or is it after a loss of somebody? When do you take that moment, or should you always be taking a moment?
Well, I would answer that I'd have two answers to that. One is, it's time to reflect when you're not getting the results you want in life. When you're out there doing something, if you want to be connected, if you want to have a relationship, if you want to make a difference in your community, and everything you seem to do, turns to ashes, well, you may want to take a look at what you're doing. And then alternatively is, that, all the great religious traditions and understanding what it means to be human are always about human development. You're always growing. You're like a flower in continual blossom. And, to nourish that blossom and nourish that development takes reflection. Sometimes it's every day. You have a 20-minute walk, or, some people do it in the shower or whatever. You turn off all your phones and all your devices and de-hook and decouple and say, hey, what's next on my list? Who do I need to be grateful for? Whom haven't I told that I love them today? Where am I rubbing somebody raw? What sharp corner of my own personality do I need to sand?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
You have so much more to share, so I'm thinking. You got me thinking. This is a terrible situation.
Excellent. Well, I'd curious to know what you're thinking about.
I'm just thinking about, I'll say to our audience that yesterday Russell and I had a conversation about me, and me is in a scenario of professional scenario, considering where I should go, what I should do, and how I should go about to do, and where, how, and a lot of professional scenarios, profit, non-profit, make money, not make money, but I gotta make money, but I'm just trying to, but how to do it in the way that I'd like to do it, because some things are not working, and I'm not focusing on having them work, and so I'm all over the place a little bit, and I'm trying to solidify that aspect of my life, and so I guess as you speak, not that I'm not listening to you, but those things are triggering some of the things that we talked about yesterday. So that's what was sort of like going on, tuning a little more up. And I have been thinking actually since some of the things that we did talk about. But you know what you did with me that was very helpful. First, you're a great listener and a tweaker to at certain moments. Is that I threw out, in essence, in the end, at least 3 things that were concerning to me, and so now I can at least, from this massive amount of confusion, I can now bring it down to maybe 3 things and the offshoots of those 3 things. If it's money, it's what should I be doing professionally? Should I play my saxophone? Should I, be a minister? Should I keep up with the good news? Whatever, and or whatever else the second scenario is, and the third, So I just trying to pull it all together.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul. And I'm glad that made a difference. I would say too that it's often, we in our heads, we create this world on our heads, and if we're spinning around inside that world and unable to find an answer, we need somebody to help us to bust out, because we create our own kind of limitations of what's possible and not possible in the world. And we're inside this little ball, right? And there's this whole world out here which we may be unaware of, or which we don't think we can access. So it really, really helps to talk to somebody, at least who's trained to start busting through that wall, or popping you out on the other side of that wall, so that you can see what else is available to you in your life.
I ate a salad last night.
Yay, Paul. None of that pulled pork, huh? Okay. So coming back to inner peace then. So inner peace is ultimately a decision that you make. And it's a decision that you give up what your survival mechanism, the tools or even the weapons that your survival mechanism uses to protect you with. Being right, being better than, status, material goods, all those things you start putting to the side, and you choose instead to come from love and openness. And there's a great risk at coming from love and openness, because you can be stomped down. That's why you have this survival mechanism. But ultimately, that's our path through life. If we want a life that is both fulfilling and full of love and connection and makes a difference to our larger community.
How does someone, I'm thankful that I get out of bed. I'm thankful that I got a bed. I'm thankful that I got a roof over my head. And so I'm a thankful dude overall, in total importance, I think, in what life has to offer. I'm blessed. I'm a blessed freaking guy. I mean, I got grandkids. I got a lot of stuff, and I always kind of get back to that. But then you have these other aspects of your life. So even all those other aspects, if they don't, if I don't eat healthy, if I don't make money, or I don't find something, I'm still happy in essence, because I'm happy to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky to be alive, and especially during the pandemic time. If I take it, almost, it's like me, it's like selfish kind of thing. I'm happy that I'm alive and not sitting in the hospital right now, and
Right.
saddened the big time. I'm saddened for a lot of the world, that a third of the world or whatever, that's hurting at this time, and spending my time to try to help get that world peace and get a food thing, just like the transatlantic cable from America to Africa, or something, things like that. Let's improve our opportunities so the little kid can get a clean glass of water. It's just so much to do. Can we confuse ourselves as far as what to do? Then, thusly, we don't have inner peace, because maybe we've taken on too many things that could frustrate us, and then as a result, we could feel not so good about ourselves.
Yeah, that's really common. People take on so much, and really, it's ironic. There's so much that you can take on. I mean, you've got a family to raise and be part of, you have your career, you've got your extended family to deal with, and any commitment you have to the larger community, plus you got your bloody phone beeping at you all the time. So it's a challenge to be able to recenter and to step back into a way of life that really works for you. And doing that takes some real commitment and real I want to say focus, but understanding really what's important to you. When you and I talked yesterday, those were the first questions I asked. What is really important to you? What are your values here? And often we're not working towards our values. We're working towards what we think we need to do, or we're not even thinking. We're just kind of on automatic. And being able to step back and say, hey, what are my values, and am I meeting them in my daily life? That's another way of inner peace, because when you're chasing values that aren't yours, when your true values are being ignored over here, right? That causes a lot of internal angst, which then is, reflected outside, into your family or into your community. So here's, if I could leave you and your listeners with one thing is, again, your survival mechanism is there to protect you, but your essence is there for your greater connection and love and being in life, your being in life. And consider that every time you make a decision, every time you're even acting, you have two choices. You can make a decision or act out of fear, which is going to trigger your survival mechanism, or you can make it out of love, right? Which is going to pull for your essence. And so just stop for a moment and say, am I doing this out of fear? Fear of looking foolish, fear of being rejected, fear of failing, fear of feeling uncomfortable. Am I doing this out of fear, or am I doing this out of love? And if that becomes just kind of this continual refrain, and you start choosing to come out of love, and it may not even be clear to you initially what coming from love might look like. So you have to do a little experimenting. And you'll know, because you'll feel it ultimately. But use that as your mantra. Am I doing this out of fear? Or am I doing this out of love? Fear or love? And we'll bring a lot more inner peace.
And is love, Russell, is love in essence for you and those around you? And is love what I'll get back to the refrigerator? Is love, is love saying, but it's the way to handle it, I think, is what we've taught, hey, can I suggest some things for you to think about? Or, the way you said, may I ask you a question, or whatever, however, a lead-in line to soften the scenario, or to open up the conversation, and so on and so forth. Because if you're doing it out of love, and hopefully you're doing almost everything you do out of love, and I guess for yourself too. I don't think that I'm doing it for love of me, because I love me. And I don't have to spend any time with me. I love me. I work hard for others. I get more pleasure out of seeing me help somebody else. I don't know whether that's nutso in this way, but I've always felt that way. Can somebody really feel that they love themselves? They know they're trying all the time to try to be good to others. I mean, I'm not perfect. I've yelled at people. I've had nuttiness also. I don't know.
Well, it's important to separate love from perfection, right? Because one's attainable and the other is not. But love is a confusing term. One, because it's overused, and two, it's not really clear what it is. But when I use the term, as I'm using it here, I'm using it in terms of not the great love that you have for your partner necessarily, or the great love you have for pizza, the love of desire. It's more a love in terms of acceptance, that you accept yourself and you accept someone else just as they are.
Right.
So when you can accept someone, I mean, that's what's considered divine love, or agape, is accepting a person exactly as they are, no more, no less, and not wanting them to be different in any way. that's the kind of love there but that's how I use love in that terms.
That's a great love. That's the greatest love. The greatest love of all, Whitney Houston. That is the greatest love, to love somebody as they are. I think is the most special thing. It's like anonymous, you know. You just kind of you did something, but nobody even knows that you did it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a great thing.
Yeah. So there we are. Easy.
Easy peasy.
You know, I'll tell you, Paul, that getting rid of, I have to say, reducing my righteousness of my wanting to be right has probably been the most difficult thing that I've done in my life. Right. I mean, I was like the story with the refrigerator, tremendously judgmental, tremendously, certain of my own arrogance that I'm better than other people, and giving up being right. It is tough. And the more you start looking at where I'm being right, where I have to be right, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. It's everywhere in my life. It's just pervasive. And give that up and instead have acceptance. This is who that person is, and leave it like that. Has been really tough. It's been my my most difficult path, as I said.
You don't seem that way. You really seem like a giver, carer.
Well, it took a lot of work, a lot of sandpaper sanding down those rough edges, I'll tell you.
Where do you think, if you don't mind me, it's in that I guess I am sort of a little bit of hosty kind of a person. And where do you think since I'll call it, and I don't know if this is the proper thing to say, a harder / tougher shell within you? Do you think, I'm only asking this because you seem to be open person for people to learn from you. How do you, a lot of times I talk to people and I ask them, why are you that way? Philanthropists, and why are you that way? I mean, I haven't had many bad guys, good news, but how did it come about that you think you had a toughness? I mean, the thing you were happy to get away from. Where do you think that came in you?
Well, I'm going to tell you two things to that. One is that I think the question of trying to find out why we are as we are is a waste of time, because we're just making it up and we're looking back into the past. And the real issue is, I am as I am right now. Who do I want to be in the future? That's the question before us. How do we go into the future? The more we spend time looking in the past, it's like spinning your wheels. And I just, both my parents are psychologists, so I grew up with Freud in the house, and the first 20 years of my life, everything was Freudian. And then I discovered Carl Jung, and all of a sudden my entire explanations for why I was the way I was completely changed. And I said, wow, what's going on here? And then after I discovered Jung, I discovered Fritz Perls, and everything changed again. And then I discovered Buddhism, and all changed. And then, it was like, who cares who cares the why? The really important question is what are you going to do in the next moment? And the why doesn't inform that. The question is, are you going to come from love here, or are you going to come from fear? That's my choice in the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. This is brilliant. NOW, which I like to say, if you spell it backwards, you get WON, and you've won if you stay in the now.
Stay in the now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, and it's so wise of you. Good man, Russell. Let me ask you one last question at this moment. Let's see, would you like to, do you have a website? How do people reach you? Because you should reach this man. It really helped me in a few moments, really evaluate a lot. I needed him at this time in my life. How do people reach you?
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. So I do have a website. It's Russell